You know, whatever your background, there are some pieces of historic legislation that both parties can agree are good for the good of the country. You'd think the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which made it illegal to deny anyone their right to vote based on race or color, would be one of those good pieces of legislation. You would think, but you would be wrong for thinking. Because the Republican Party of Texas has just released its platform, which calls for the repeal of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, except they call it the Voter Rights Act. They must have learned about that from a textbook that was written in Texas. Please, somebody mess with Texas already. Joining me now to discuss this and other news of the day is one of my favorite New York comics and host of Blacking It Up on TWIB.FM. I had the honor of performing off-Broadway with this gentleman, Elon James White. Good evening, sir.
Indeed, sir.
Great to have you here. Thank you for blacking it up in my presence.
It's fine.
Thank you.
They probably won't let me vote now.
Well, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the Texas GOP platform is calling for the repeal of the Voting Rights Act of 65. This isn't something that would ever happen. Is this just a dog whistle for racists?
I don't know if it's even a dog whistle for racists, but it is one of those things where you can just kind of like throw it out because voting is a big thing right now. Like, and they want to make sure they can mess with as much voting as possible because they're so afraid that the Negro might get elected again. So they're doing everything in their power, and this is just one of those things that you just throw out there and see how many people are going to go, yeah, that's kind of reasonable, and then you hopefully point those people out and then go, we will not have barbecues with you.
Yeah, well, you're right, and again, it's about restricting the vote and curbing people who can vote. We saw this, of course, in Florida with Rick Scott throwing anybody whose name he didn't like off the voter rolls.
Right.
And this week, accidentally, apparently, a Republican actually admitted the plot. Pennsylvania Republican House Leader Mike Turzai revealed that the reason for their voter ID law was, in fact, politically motivated. Take a listen.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
Voter ID.
Now, how awesome is that?
In some states, you can't vote with a student ID, but you can vote with an NRA ID. I mean, that's the reality in some states. Is this whole voter ID craze, and again, voter fraud, not a huge problem in this country. Is that just a way to de facto repeal the Voting Rights Act?
It's not. I would argue it's not. I don't even think they really care about the Voters Act. They really care about November, and they're terrified. They're willing to do anything possible. And the fact that he went out and said that, and he didn't think anyone was going to go, hey, that's a problem, is hilarious. That guy is, I don't even know what he thought was going to happen when he came out and said that.
I don't think the guy realized there were cameras in the room. You know, I trace this back 20 years, Elon. I trace this back to when George Bush Sr. vetoed the motor voter bill, which was a really smart piece of legislation that would have automatically registered anybody to vote the second they got their driver's license.
Why would you want to do that? Why would you want more people voting? Because then all of a sudden they might think this is a democracy. Sir, that is problematic.
And President Bush vetoed it, saying that he didn't believe in a free country you can force people to vote, which it didn't do. That's what sane people call a lie. So now we see it happening all over again. I mean, does it surprise you? And it's not just about black folks. It's about poor folks. It's about seniors.
College students. This hits a lot of people. And the thing is that what I like what they're doing here is they're, like, one, it is disenfranchising a certain amount of the black community. So people within the black community has stepped up and said something. So now it's become the label of it, because that's what you do when you want anything to go wrong. You put black people on it. When they wanted social services to be cut back, listen, welfare queens, black, you know what they're doing. Same thing here. It's like, listen, oh, now they can't figure out how to vote. It's like, actually, what about the 85-year-old white woman who can't vote now because she doesn't have that ID from when she got married 50 years ago?
Exactly right. And, you know, it gets so discouraging to think about all this sometime. I thank God, and I thank the comedy gods for a man like Herman Cain.
Oh, geez. And that's the best part. Herman Cain and Blackwell decided to come out and really go after Eric Holder.
Blackwell being Kim Blackwell,
yes,
former Secretary of State of Ohio.
Yes, and they came out, two black men together to go attack, whatchamacallit, what's his name, Eric Holder, because that right there shows that it's not a racist attack now.
How could it possibly be racist?
We have two black people doing it now, so now we can totally get away with it.
Shill, baby, shill. And, you know, to this day, a lot of my liberal friends still blame Mr. Blackwell for Bush winning Ohio in 2004. Now, Herman Cain was an anomaly to me because you had Gary Johnson, the two-time democratically elected governor of of New Mexico running for president as a libertarian Republican, he was hardly ever invited to any of those GOP debates. Only 2, I believe, he was allowed to speak at. Yet Herman Cain, whose biggest claim to fame was being a lobbyist for McDonald's, keeping the minimum wage low in the 90s, was allowed to every single GOP debate.
Well, because he had to. Like, otherwise, the Republicans would look very, very weird, you know, because like if they don't let the black guy who's running, like he's getting some buzz going, they have a problem with people of color. I don't know if you've noted that yet. There's a thing with them and people of color a lot of times, and women.
They don't mind. I actually find that they don't mind people of color as long as they dress, vote, and talk like we do. In that case, they don't mind it at all. If you're a person of color who doesn't mind disenfranchising other folks of color, then they have no problem whatsoever.
Love it.
I would say it's not so much racist as classist. Or tribal? Is it just tribal?
It's a combination of all of it. I'm not saying that the conservative Republicans are racist, all of them, because that would be ignorant thing to say. But there is an issue. There is a definite ignorance that comes with this, and they don't understand what large groups, not all black people, but large swaths of black people care about, and they don't care about those things. And then when you point out, hey, a lot of people care about that, they're like, you are a problem.
And you're the guy who goes out and makes it funny. This is comedian and host of Blacking It Up on TWIB.FM, Elon James White. It's always a pleasure, Elon. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, sir.
That's Viewpoint for tonight. I am John Fugel saying I thank you. Tomorrow's the big Supreme Court day. We anxiously look forward to seeing what the justices will say. Stay tuned right now to enter the war room with the one, the only, Governor Jennifer Granholm.